What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, so this is the narrative. Oh, Donald Trump is calling for an investigation into the 2020 election. But what they're not telling you is very, very fascinating, and we're going to get to that at the end of this news article, because this news article goes over what Donald Trump said, but they leave out the main information. It's absurd, y'all. But once again, folks, this is what I do. We point out the manipulations of the corporate press, and this is a big one right here. Check this out, y'all. Trump calls for a special prosecutor to investigate 2020 election, reviving long-standing grievance. Oh, is that so? Long-standing grievance. I just love these narratives, and I just love the propaganda that is meant to look like news, but it's all fake news. President Donald Trump on Friday called for the appointment of a special prosecutor to investigate the 2020 election won by Democratic Joe Biden, repeating his baseless claim that the contest was marred by widespread fraud. Oh, is that so baseless anymore? We're going to come to find out that that was a lie, folks, when they're trying to manipulate you into, once again, they push the narrative, oh, you're an election denier, as a pejorative, right? Not actually telling you the truth about there was a lot of irregularities around that election. Still to this day, there's still many, many people that question that election. They question how we got to the results of that election. They call them election deniers, right? That, once again, that's meant as a pejorative to make you look like you're a fool. You're just an idiot, because that was the most free and fair election in American history. In the age of cyber warfare and mail-in ballots and ballot harvesting and procedural football, for goodness sakes, you might not know what that is. I think I just made that up. But essentially, where Democrats try to use procedure to win elections instead of votes to win elections. And we'll get into that. We got into it a little bit way back in the day when I was talking about the shadow campaign. I don't know if you guys remember my video on the shadow campaign. The longtime viewers of this channel will know what I'm talking about with that. But it's where Democrats essentially went state to state to state, changing rules and changing laws to benefit the Democratic Party and to put Republicans at a disadvantage. They did that. We covered the news articles. So, once again, if you don't believe me, just go through my video archive. Shadow campaign. It's right there in the title, folks. How the 2020 election was stolen. Biden was grossly incompetent, and the 2020 election was a total fraud, Trump said in a social media post, in which he also sought to favorably contrast his immigration enforcement approach with that of the former president. The evidence is massive and overwhelming. A special prosecutor must be appointed. This cannot be allowed to happen again in the United States of America. Let the work begin. Trump's post, made as his Republican White House is consumed by a hugely substantial foreign policy decision on whether to get directly involved in the Israel-Iran war, is part of an amped-up effort by him to undermine the legitimacy of Biden's presidency. That's funny. That's a bunch of nonsense. You realize how much of that was filler? For the sake of pointing out the manipulations, that sentence, without all the qualifiers, would be Trump's post is part of an amped-up effort by him to undermine the legitimacy of Biden's presidency. Yeah. So you could take out 80% of that sentence. Earlier this month, Trump directed his administration to investigate Biden's actions as president, alleging aides masked his predecessor's cognitive decline. Biden has dismissed the investigation as a mere distraction. The Post also revives a long-running grievance by Trump that the election was stolen, even though courts around the country and a Trump attorney general from his first term found no evidence of fraud that could have affected the outcome. You love that. But what they're not telling you right there is, oh, the courts found no evidence. Well, that's because the evidence was never presented, right? This is what we got from the corporate press and Democratic pundits out there is, oh, Donald Trump hasn't shown any evidence at all. Where's the evidence? We want to see the evidence of all this fraud. Well, because it wasn't really voter fraud in the traditional sense, right? It was the electioneering by Democrats, the procedural game, the mail-in ballots, the ballot harvesting, like the mail-in ballots, like, the essentially counting the ballots that had mistakes that should have been thrown out, counting the ballots that were post-dated after the due date, things like that, counting ballots that were counted after the cutoff date, things of that nature. Donald Trump brought 90-something court cases in the 2020 election, right? 66, I think it was 66, or it might have been 63. Quote me if I'm wrong, admonish me if I'm wrong on that, but it was 60-something of those cases were thrown out, right, upon standing, right, which means that they didn't look at any evidence at all. They just told Donald Trump that he is not party to damages. That's what throwing it out on standing means. Just dismissed upon standing, essentially. That, in other words, the voters would have had to bring that case, or someone in the state, representative, somebody, law firm, whoever it may be, just not Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is not party to damages from this specific lawsuit, because a lot of it, like I said, it was procedural stuff, counting mail-in ballots. It would have had to been whoever counted the ballots, whatever county, blah, blah, blah. You get it. It just couldn't be Donald Trump. 60% of his cases were thrown out upon standing. That means all the evidence for any voter fraud in all of those cases was not seen. Was just a waste. So these are the things that the corporate press omit from these news articles, that it's pertinent information to actually shape your opinion on these matters. You would have a very different opinion of that statement right there that I just read to you if all of that information that I just gave you would have been added into that, right? If we would have known that, right after the 2020 election, when Donald Trump, when all these lawsuits were going through. But what did we get? We got from the corporate press. Oh, but there's no evidence. Oh, Donald Trump loses the case. That's what they kept telling you. He lost those cases. No, he didn't lose the case. Being dismissed upon standing is not really losing the case. They just did not take the case at all. It was not presided over. It wasn't litigated, in other words, at all. It's just a judge banging the gavel saying, no, get out of here. You're not party to damages. We're not going to go through any of this. But once again, folks, now does the election deniers look so crazy? No, not so much. But once we get to the end of this article, you're going to see. The Department of Homeland Security's cybersecurity arm pronounced the election the most secure in American history. Like I told you, the most free and fair election ever. If they have to tell you that it was the most free and fair election in American history, that should be your first concern. It was unclear what Trump had in mind when he called for a special prosecutor. An investigation, that's what he had in mind. But in the event Attorney General Pam Bondi heeds his call, she may face pressure to appoint someone who has already been confirmed by the Senate. A Justice Department spokesman declined to comment Friday, but did they comment Thursday maybe? I'm just saying. The Justice Department in recent years has appointed a succession of special counsels, sometimes, though not always, plucked from outside the agency to lead investigations into politically sensitive matters, including into conduct by Biden and Trump. Last year, Trump's personal lawyers launched an aggressive and successful challenge to the appointment of Jack Smith, special counsel. Okay, this is just all bloviating nonsense. It's blah, 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 Merrick Garland this, blah, 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 this and that. I'm not going to get into all that because I'm not going to waste your time. That's all just, like I said, bloviating nonsense. What we want to get into, folks, is why Donald Trump is calling for a special prosecutor. Am I right? Check this out. Kash Patel declassifies FBI report alleging Chinese plot to interfere in 2020 election with mail-in ballots. Once again, folks, this is an insane story. Fascinatingly enough, the corporate press, Associated Press that is, just conveniently forgot to add this into the article, and they wanted to add all that other bloviating nonsense. This is how you're being manipulated, folks. Most of the time, it's by omission. A newly declassified intelligence report has been turned over to Congress, raising serious concerns that the Chinese Communist Party sought to interfere in the 2020 U.S. presidential election by mass-producing fake American driver's licenses to fraudulently cast mail-in ballots for then-candidate Joe Biden. The report, dated August 2020 and previously withheld from public view, was delivered to Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley by FBI Director Kash Patel on Monday evening. According to Just the News, the intelligence was never fully investigated or corroborated. Instead, it was recalled by intelligence agencies around the time then FBI Director Christopher Wray testified before Congress that no known foreign plots to influence the election had been detected. So he got this information of this Chinese plot before he testified to Congress that China was not trying to involve themselves, that this was the most free and fair election in American history. This is insane. And there's the post, the tweet or whatever from Kash Patel. If you want to read that, go ahead and pause the video, but I'm going to keep going. Patel said the release of the document fulfills oversight requests from Chairman Grassley and represents a shift towards transparency. I totally agree with that. He said there was going to be a wave of transparency, and he wasn't lying. Patel told the outlet, thanks to the oversight work and partnership of Chairman Grassley, the FBI continues to provide unprecedented transparency at the People's Bureau. I don't like it when they call it that, the People's Bureau. That sounds like some communist nightmare, if you ask me. But these include allegations of plans from the CCP to manufacture fake driver's licenses and ship them into the United States for the purpose of facilitating fraudulent mail-in ballots. Allegations which, while substantiated, were abruptly recalled and never disclosed to the public. So apparently, this wasn't some made-up nonsense. This wasn't some alleged plot by the Chinese Communist Party. That was substantiated. Fascinating, y'all. The intelligence report came from a confidential source who claimed the Chinese government was actively producing counterfeit driver's licenses to create fraudulent voter identities. The goal, the source claimed, was to enable Chinese nationals residing in the U.S. to vote via mail-in ballots in favor of Joe Biden. The allegations were dismissed after the FBI leadership at the time claimed the source required further vetting. However, Customs and Border Protection had reportedly intercepted nearly 20,000 fake U.S. driver's licenses during the same period the intelligence surfaced, potentially corroborating the claims. So, once again, and all this was brushed under the radar. This was all kept classified and just brushed right under the rug, folks. This is nonsense. This is what came out of the Biden administration. They were heavy on the censorship, heavy on secrecy, and really, really, really light on transparency. Despite this, the report was never made public and was pulled back from active investigation shortly after being filed, Just the News reported. Insane, y'all. Grassley has long raised concerns about the intelligence community's handling of election interference threats. His ongoing probe seeks to determine whether political considerations influence the decision to shelve the CCP-related intelligence. Fascinating, that is. So, once again, folks, with looking at all the electioneering by Democrats, all of the nonsense with the counting of the ballots that came in late, or they were wrong, or, weren't signed, or had a wrong signature, signature verification mistakes, all of those things, including this news article, the Chinese plot for mail-in ballots specifically, it kind of makes you wonder. Okay, so if you look at the two elections, preceding and succeeding the 2020 election, Democrats got about the same amount of votes in 2016 and then also in 2024. That's fascinating, don't you think? Seems consistent, don't it? Donald Trump got a few million more votes in 2024. But if you look, he had 62 million in 2016. 72 million. I think it was 72 million in 2020. And then what was it? 78 million 2024, something like that. So you see a consistent growth in support. Now, Donald Trump at the time, 2020, got the most votes ever by an incumbent president in an election. And he still lost. And if you look, once again, Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election had like 65 million votes or something like that. Yeah, she won the popular vote, by the way. So she had more votes. She had 65. What did Kamala Harris have? What was it, like 70 something? 72 million, I believe, 72, 73 million votes. It's a bit of an increase, don't you think? But what did Joe Biden have? 81 million votes? That's a massive increase, folks. It's a massive increase. And it was all due to mail-in ballots. Once again. So I think it's legitimate that Donald Trump is looking into this. Totally legitimate. I think it needs to be looked into. I think we need more investigation to see exactly what happened. Now, I'm not going to lie. There ain't nothing going to be done about that. But the American public deserves to know what happened in 2020. And lawmakers, as a matter of fact, need to know exactly what happened in 2020. If there was a bunch of malfeasance, we need to figure out some sort of a way to try to prevent countries like China, countries like Russia or Iran or anybody that may want to interfere in our elections, figure out countermeasures, figure out, ways to make sure that they don't, essentially. So I think it's a good idea, but what is the corporate press doing? Oh, they're trying to drum up false narratives back here of fraudulent votes in the 2020 election. Unsubstantiated claims by Donald Trump. Fascinating, don't you think? Very, very fascinating, folks. Once again, you're being manipulated on a massive scale. Massive scale. Massive scale. And a lot of people just don't know it. That's why I say the divide in this country currently is between people that do their due diligence and they research the news and they try to corroborate what the corporate press is telling us versus people that just get propagandized by the corporate press. So that's all it is, folks. And then, of course, you have people that care and the people that don't care. But, that's always going to be people that just don't care at all. Now this story, from the FBI, what Kash Patel, that was kind of an older story that I just didn't pick up on. But, when I saw this, I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta do it. Now, Donald Trump heard about this news article and was like, hang on, we need to investigate this now. And, he was already like, 2020 was a fraud, blah, 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 blah. But, the way the corporate press, they try to insult people for questioning that election. I wonder why. Why would they go so hardcore against these people? Right? Throwing, oh, are you an election denier? What? Like, it was just crazy, wasn't it? Oh, we got a bunch of election deniers over here. It's crazy nonsense. That's how you can tell you're being propagandized, when they immediately go to insults. They just want to insult you and make everybody else get on their side, because the one throwing the insult is usually the one in the right. Right? Fascinating. Y'all let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. Y'all don't forget to smash that like button for me. Subscribe if you're new around here. You want more videos like this? Share this video anywhere and everywhere you can. That would be greatly, greatly appreciated. And if y'all could, look right below the video, click that join button, and just read. That's all I ask. Just read. Check it out. And if you're interested, go ahead and sign up, become a member, help me deliver the news to you guys. But outside of all that, y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.